Hello and welcome to the CBB Supershow, brought to you by the FTN Network. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, coming to you late night. It's almost 11:30 on the West Coast, but we're out here. We're doing our thing. We're still bringing you the best college basketball content in the world. Had to grind out that late night whack title game. That was fun. Had to do some obnoxious live tweeting there as we got through a just absolutely amazing game. Marred a little bit at the end there of the Grand Canyon win. Say what you will about the late night end of the game in hand dunk. Yes, there was a little bit of showmanship there, a windmill dunk, probably a little bit too much. Say what you will, though. You know, your emotions are up very high. You're talking about kids, like they're celebrating a little bit, right? The fact that Vining threw the ball at him and Russell body checked him like it was an NHL game, a little over the top. And then they assess the text and the fouls, and they throw out number one on Grand Canyon, Derek Michael Zavario, of course. A little used freshman because he left the bench. So a lot of stoppages and things there, but that was an absolute amazing game. And anybody who hasn't gotten a chance to watch the Lopes play this season, hopefully you watched that one. This is a team that could be an 11 seed, maybe a 12, but who wants to see them as a, last four in type of P5 team that maybe limped into the tourney with all these bubbles bursting? Facing a team like this that Bryce Drew has just masterfully run and coached this year and went out and got all these different transfers to fill different spots. Duke Brennan, ASU, little used ASU transfer playing a role there. Locke Ware, who was at Oregon, he played really well tonight. And of course, Ray Harrison, Tyon Grant Foster, who's had multiple heart surgeries, didn't even get a chance to play at DePaul, ran on Kansas's bench a couple of years ago, just an absolute machine of a player. And Game McLaughlin was been in Grand Canyon for a few years now. Just a really fun team, and a team capable of winning that 5-12 or 6-11 matchup for sure. It had been a weird week. Admittedly, we've been a little bit cold this week. I mentioned that yesterday, but we got a chance to play a slate that, fits our criteria of teams that, we watch a lot, mid majors, low majors, and that really panned out. One of our subs shipped that 1K to first GBP. Spud in the Discord, One-Eye Jacks, congrats for that. Really fun slate there that worked out well. And that had re-energized me for sure, because we're getting beat down a little bit there. We had some nice prop calls, but we needed to see a slate like that go down. It was a 3-gamer. Prize pools were a little bit weak, but still we hammered that one out. Feels absolutely great. Late night show. Appreciate everybody who is hanging out with me here. I know it is extremely late. We have a ton of shows planned for tomorrow as well, not just from me, but also Mike Rando, our chief content officer, and also the betting show host, and Mike Kutri. I believe they are going to be doing some bracket talk shows. I'm also going to be going live tomorrow about 10 to 15 minutes before the bracket reveal show starts on CBS. We're going to be watching that live with you guys. Basically, talking about pairing seedings, any initial thoughts, DFS-wise, prop betting, and just bracket picks, and maybe like a first Final Four. We'll have some special guests. We'll have some co-hosts. We'll be chatting with people. We'll have people come on, ask questions live. It's going to be a fun time. We're just going to be hanging out. Just going to be a bunch of folks hanging out, talking about college basketball, what we love. Also, the rest of the week after that, there will be shows Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Not on Sunday night. We'll be taking a reprieve then, but every single day from here on out until next Sunday, the Super Show will be live. We'll be talking NIT slates, play-in game slates, breaking down the entire first round, slate 1A, slate 1B, all of that fun stuff. We're going to continue to grind through it. This is our time. This is our Super Bowl. One shining moment is coming. Bittersweet moment. Having to hold back tears. Johnny, I see you in the chat there. I know you get a little teary-eyed when the one shining moment plays. It's okay to admit it. But we have a lot of opportunities left here to still make some money, and we're going to do so. Let's just get into the chat here before we roll through this slate. Party's still going strong in Raleigh. Alex, a.k.a. Aquasaw, gets it done, willing his Wolfpack to the title. What was it, 5 games in 5 nights? Jesus, that is just such a phenomenal performance there. And I don't know if you guys saw there, I posted in the Discord, but it was also being tweeted around, and I wasn't quite sure if it was a troll, if it was real. I don't know Coach Keats' contract details, but it was said that one of his stipulations were if he in any contract year wins the ACC tournament, he gets an automatic 2-year extension, confirmed not only by Alex, who I trust with all Wolfpack news, but also Rothbot tweeting it out and saying that as well. So on the hot seat and likely heading into the ACC tournament on his way out, from what everybody said, gets himself a 2-year extension. Long live Coach Keats. Let's go. What a great win. And they were whacking people. But really the hero of the tournament has to be, we love Mo Diarra. That's our guy. DJ Burns. America has woken up and seen DJ Burns, and he was trending on Twitter yesterday. But the real hero got to be Michael Connell. I mean, without that shot, there is no Wolfpack. There is no Coach Keats. With NIL going on, O'Connell might be entitled to a little bit of something here from Coach Keats, because that extension would not be possible without former Stanford superstar Michael Connell. All right, let's see what else we got here. We got lots of Coach Keats talk. Russell had, there are a lot of fouls, man. That game, just so many fouls at the end of that WAC game. It was tough, but executed to a T. Johnny and I were talking in text. He wanted, Foster to get right back out there with his 4th foul. They had to get him to the 5-minute mark. They had to hold down the fort for the 5-minute mark, then get him back in there, because then you can kind of play it a little bit different. Can't afford to have him pick up that 5th foul and be out there in 7.5 minutes to go. That just would have taken all of the steam out of the team, all of their momentum. That was a mental gamble there by Coach Drew, and it did pan out. There's levels to this, as my son would say, and that worked out quite well. I'm excited for this Lopes team. All right, let's go. We're going to be talking about the 4-game slate. It's a shame it's not a 5-game slate. The Ivy League title game will be taking place tomorrow as well. That one starts at 9 a.m. West Coast time. The slate itself is going to be starting at 10 a.m., so they do leave that one off. There will be betting opportunities there, but Yale will be taking on Brown. That's going to be a fun game. Yale beat Cornell today 69-57, and perhaps somewhat of a shocker, Brown took apart Princeton. The game got really high scoring. They end up winning 90-81. People are going to look at this Brown team and think, wow, they had a losing record. How did they beat Princeton? But they have some dudes. Keno Lilly, who had 27 and 10 assists, mind you. Nana Osu Anan, he had 19 points, 15 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals. They have some players. Obviously, they're going to be a 15-16 seed. No one's going to give them any credit. If they do beat Yale, that is. Yale maybe have a little bit better chance for a 13 or a 14 seed perhaps. But don't get it twisted. This Brown team has guys, and they are fully capable of winning. A lot of their games were close losses, and they've also, you have to look at it momentum-wise, Brown has won now 7 games straight, 2 of which were in overtime in their last 4. So things are clicking for that team and this Ivy League. Typically the team that comes out of the Ivy League, they can compete. They are a squad, whoever comes out of there. And you typically see Ivy League transfers do well in other places, not just Ryan Langborg at Northwestern, but many others as well. The kid at Harvard, Malik Mack, who was the freshman of the year, he's going to be an absolute star. I don't envision him staying at Harvard for too long. He might. Grad transfers from the Ivy League, though, because the Ivy League does not allow a 5th year, you end up seeing them go to P5s and playing quite well. Speaking of Ivy League grad transfers, Seth Towns, who has been in college basketball forever. Howard got the bid tonight. They did win. Seth Towns gets to go dancing in what I believe is his final collegiate season as they took down the MEAC tournament. Howard has a phenomenal roster. Very, very happy about that. All right, so without the Ivy League game, that leaves us with a 4-game slate. That includes the SEC title game, the Big Ten title game, the A10 title game, which is between VCU and Duquesne. Whoever had that on their bingo card has a almanac in their back pocket, I would say. And then, of course, the mighty Temple Owls, who continue to shock the world, will be in the American Athletic Conference title game against UAB. Charlotte, SMU, FAU, all falling to this red-hot Temple squad. UAB did their job. They knock off the top seed South Florida. That means South Florida is going to be headed to the NIT. That's tough, a real tough scene, because that bubble has shrunk. As NC State stole a bid, other teams have stole a bid. Dayton losing in the A10 meant a bid is gone, and that bubble is shrinking. And now the latest update on Joe Lunardi's bracketology, I did post a screenshot from that, showed teams that we thought were going to be in the tournament for sure just 48 hours ago, like St. John's, Seton Hall, possibly Indiana State, and even Providence, who thought maybe they had done enough winning a few games there in the Big East tournament. However, with 3 to 4 bid thieves in the last 48 hours, that now means Ohio State, who, was trying to make a run there, they're obviously not going to get in. Kansas State, last year's darling, they're not going to get in. Providence, they're on the outside looking in. Pittsburgh, they're NIT bound. Right now, we have 4 to 5 teams trying to fit into 3 to 4 spots. That's going to be difficult. That looks like, and Colorado's in. Even though Colorado lost to Oregon, there's another bid thief. They're going to be in. Colorado may end up having to go to a play-in game, which that's tough scene, but they're in. So that leaves us with Michigan State, who I know a lot of people, Adam Young, think that they don't belong in. They have the computer tricking metrics, but maybe they don't necessarily deserve it. Oklahoma, St. John's, who just 36 hours ago was a guaranteed, in the tourney. Virginia, who's probably not going to get in. Seton Hall, who I think is now not going to get in, even though the job that Coach Holloway has done there has been nothing short of miraculous. And unfortunately, Indiana State, which that's going to be a tough one, because the net, in the history of the net rankings, there has never been a team as high as them being left out of an at-large. And right now, as it stands, Indiana State is probably on the outside looking in. It stands in the current net rankings. They are 30th. They were right around 28, 29. Now they're at 30 in the current one. No team in that net ranking region has been left out since the advent and creation of net rankings. But I really find it hard to believe that the Sycamores are going to get in here. Perhaps if Oregon didn't end up beating Colorado tonight, perhaps if Dayton would have taken care of business, perhaps if NC State, which I'm okay, Alex, America's team, we all know who that is. That's the Washington Huskies. We know that. But I'm willing to give that moniker up for the tournament and bestow America's team title on the NC State Wolfpack. So even though their presence in the tournament may knock out a darling of everyone in America, Indiana State, out of the tournament, that's okay. America's team, NC State, we'll see how their seeding is. I'm okay with them getting in. But yeah, there's going to be some pretty tough shots there. And historically, mid-majors, they're just the ones that get boned the most. Borderline P5 teams, they tend to get in. It's those mid-majors that get the raw deal, and that's likely going to be the case here as well. We also have TCU right there. His current last 4 in, and Joe Lunardi, who is, pretty accurate for the most part, is Colorado, TCU, Michigan State, and Oklahoma. First 4 out being St. John's, Virginia, Seton Hall, and Indiana State. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. FAU is apparently safely in, projecting currently at a 9-10 seed. Mississippi State did enough, according to Lunardi, to get in. Texas A&M did enough to get in, and Colorado State is apparently still safely in. So there's going to be some well-deserving teams left out, some teams that probably didn't deserve to get in, such as Virginia with their kind of late season collapsing. Kansas State, who, didn't do themselves any early season favors, but it's going to be a interesting selection show. And one thing's for sure, we're going to be bitching about something. There's no other way to put it. The committee knows they're not going to get it right 100% to what we like. I'll be the first to admit I'm going to find something wrong with what they decide to do. That's just what we do. We will pick and pick and pick on those decisions. We're going to complain about some pairings. There's going to be a red hot team that we really like DFS wise, and overall just want to see them win games. And they're going to get a bad matchup in the first round, and it's going to be a wasted matchup, and we're not going to get them for very long. So We'll see what happens. Selection show tomorrow, roughly about 10 to 15 minutes prior to the CBS show. Basically, once the final game, the Big Ten title goes, final, Vamu's done, we're going to be jumping on. We're going to be shooting the breeze. We're going to be doing our thing. And I hope you guys take the time to tune in and hang out with us as we watch it live. Now, I'll be streaming it, which means it'll probably be a little bit behind, but still we'll do our thing, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Yeah, okay. Alex says Indiana State can take our highest net left out title. We were 33rd. I believe that was the highest. Yeah, looking at it, that was the highest net ever left out. So they're sitting at 30. Kind of poetic justice there for them to replace you. All right, now we're going to get into the 4-game slate here. It starts with Duquesne versus VCU. Not going to lie, I'm not particularly excited about the matchups on this slate. There's a lot of games that I'm just not that hyped about, but it's basketball. It's live or die, win or go home type of basketball. So we're going to be excited for it. We're going to watch it. There are some extremely appealing tournaments for this last pre-tournament, pre-NIT playing game slate. On the 4-gamer, you have the $20 buy-in ticket puncher. Not sure about that name. $10K to first. So that has 1,764 entrants on DK. $10,000 to first. Imagine being able to have that in your bankroll as you enter the tournament and be able to bully a lobby. Last year on day 2 of the tournament, was blessed to win 10K on the 222. That enabled us to do some things and play some, bullying in the lobby. And it's just a huge boost to the overall bankroll. Obviously, paid for some appliances there, as we always joke. So not bad. Obviously a top heavy tournament. Second place, 2,500, third place, 1,000, fourth place, you win 500, but geez, what could have been there if you win 10,000. That'll be a fun one. Definitely will be playing that one. And we'll find some guys who won't be that highly owned on a 4-game slate. I'm very, very confident in that. Also, the final chance, if you haven't qualified for the Mania just yet, not calling it King of the Bracket, hell no, the Mania, Bracket Mania, tried and true. $95, 100 entrants. It's at 62 of 100 right now. Probably shouldn't wait if you do plan to enter that last chance to get in the Mania. We'll do some coverage on that as well. Maybe we'll get some people who are in the Mania on the show. We'll do some talks. We'll get into some strategies. We'll do all that good stuff. All right. If you're new to the show, before we get into slate, I just want to mention what it is we do here. We talk about college basketball. Go figure. DFS perspective, mostly DraftKings. We talk PrizePicks, props, betting opportunities, all that good stuff. We go game by game. The only tried and true method to break down a slate, to be honest, the players, positions, all that. Maybe that works in some sports, but when it comes to what we cover here, college basketball, and in the summer and fall, college football, we do game by game. Please, all of us come together, and you veterans, I know you're already having your donuts, drinking your coffee. Never mind the fact that it's well past midnight for all of you. Come together, join hands, get on your computer, your laptop, tablet, phone, whatever it is you're using, Nintendo DS, Game Boy Color, Sega Game Gear, Xbox 360, and hit that like button. The best way, people ask me all the time, like, how can I support the show more? How do I support your content? Hey, I showed some people your content. They're looking at subbing. That's the best way to do for helping us get more people over to FTN, but for show content, engaging with me and the many personalities that we have at FTN really helps us. Algorithm on YouTube looks for engagements, likes, comments, shares, all that stuff, sharing the video on your social medias, liking it, talking, asking questions, even jumping on. Shoot, I'll throw it. Any of you guys that want to come on tomorrow and chop it up, we're going to do that. We're going to open it up and we're going to have like a live board like we used to do on Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio. You guys remember those days? It was like a radio show, poor quality, but it was fun. We had guests on all the time. And we had callers on all the time. So we're going to be doing all that. Engagements with the show, please. That's how you can help me. And, if you want to, buy me a shirt or a jersey or something, I wouldn't tell you no. All right, getting into the first game here, VCU versus Duquesne. This is for the A10 crown. Now, Dayton is in no matter what. We know that. They're in safely. So regardless of who wins or who loses this, we already know a bid's being stolen. If VCU loses, they're not getting in. Duquesne's obviously not getting in. This is a win and you're in situation. Lose and you may not even make the NIT. VCU is a 2-point favorite, a total of 126.5. That is an absolute barn burner. Is Virginia in the mix here? VCU versus Virginia, that would be what, 90 total? The other totals on this slate aren't particularly great. However, we have the Auburn-Florida game, which is great. Everything else kind of mediocre in what we expect pace and scoring to be. This being the absolute worst. But it doesn't mean there isn't some value that we can look at here. With VCU as a 2-point favorite, that is where we probably want to start. Duquesne's is tough. They run a deeper rotation that can be somewhat tilting to try and figure out. Their game today against St. Bonaventure, Day Grant did have one of those games where he absolutely took over. And we mentioned last night, Day has this high upside, high usage, high volume scoring that he can bring to the table. He has taken a back seat at times to Jimmy Clark, but he absolutely took over the game today against St. Bonaventure's. 27 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. Jimmy Clark, for good measure, had an 18, 8, and 6. One of those Braden Smith-esque, faux triple-double type of lines. But this team still continues to run 8, 9, 10-man deep. We did see 30-plus minutes for Clark, Day Grant, and Jake D. Michelle. Husseini Dram played 29 minutes, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, 1 steal. Kind of a tougher line there. Dusan Mahoric, who starts, still around, been around forever, played 16. And then we saw David Dixon, Kareem Rozier, Halil Berry, not Halle Berry, don't get too excited over there, Adam, and Jacob Nikos all play double-digit minutes. So with that being said, I do want to look at the VCU side here. Joey Bamisile did not play particularly well. He was a guy that I was interested in this game against St. Joseph's. Still, it's tricky because he comes off the bench, and he typically plays about 20 to 25 minutes. He played those 22 minutes. He only took 5 shots. Part of the problem was the efficiency, and it wasn't a problem for the team as they won, but a problem for Joey Bam and anyone who rostered him. Max Shulga, Zeb Jackson, and Shane Barstow all had a high degree of efficiency when it came to scoring. They made a tremendous amount of their 2-point field goals, and Shulga was red hot from long range, making 3 of 4. Those are the 3 players that I would expect in this one to play 35-plus minutes. Your other 2 starters in that lineup, Christian Fairman and Kwani, they typically play less than 20 minutes. That was the case with Kwani playing 14. Christian Furman played 21. Tobu Lawal, Jason Nelson, Michael Bell, and Joe Bamisile came off the bench, with Joey B being the only one to play 20 minutes. Looking at prices for VCU, Sean Barstow is the cheapest on the board and someone I expect to be very highly owned. 5.8K. He was only 6.1K today. He had 17.5. The game seemed like he was way more involved than he actually was, but he took 13 shots, making 6 of them in 35 minutes. The peripherals weren't great. St. Joe's did a nice job there, but part of the thing was VCU was just knocking down shots. There wasn't a lot of rebounding opportunities there because they were red hot at a time. So the 5.8K price point on Sean Barstow, whether you think he's a good player or not, doesn't matter. He's just going to be industry chalk. And we know this because all week and part of last week, guys who fall into this range of 5.5 to 6.5, even if the matchup sucks, even if they're historically not a very good fantasy asset, they're just mega chalk. Cam Matthews today for Mississippi State was case in point. Exhibit A, if you will. And we mentioned this last night. I knew he was going to be somewhat popular. And we've liked Cam Matthews all season long. We've been able to use him, and he's been a really nice play. He did end up fouling out in 31 minutes today, but we know Auburn, their interior defense is the real deal. And I had a lot of difficulties believing that Tolu Smith or Cam Matthews was just going to completely own them. Now, Tolu Smith did have a double-double, 10 points, 10 rebounds, but obviously that's not paying off the typical price for him. And overall, they just handcuffed Cam Matthews. He had a decent enough first half. In the second half, mired by foul trouble, he just couldn't get anything going. He had to be way less aggressive. Jimmy Bell did nothing. Auburn just continues to be a stout front court defense. We saw that against South Carolina when they beat them by a wide margin. Colin Murray-Boyles had that first half foul trouble. He never got going. They kept him from scoring. He didn't have a very good game. Auburn's defense is the real deal, and that means we saw some struggles there from Cam Matthews. And knowing that that was a bad matchup, he shouldn't have probably been as highly owned as he was. but he was because of price point. So Sean Barstow, I expect to be a highly owned DFS option, but I do like him in this spot, and I think he's got a good opportunity to make a 4x return for us here. Max Shulga at 6'8". I suspect I haven't got a chance to really dive into the projections just yet. We'll work on that tonight, though. I suspect he will project quite well. He has the last few VCU slates, and he definitely did today. Now, granted, St. Joe's is a much better fantasy matchup for them than Duquesne's will be, but you got to look at a guy who came off a 41 fantasy point performance here today against St. Joe's, 25 real points. Shulga definitely in the mix for our main lineup here. I like Zeb Jackson as a GPP look. He was a little lackluster at 22.5. Also the most expensive player on VCU, but definitely high upside, worth a look there, especially in that large field 10K to first GPP. I wouldn't expect Zeb to have much ownership whatsoever. Joey Bam is down to 5'9". That's intriguing. The minutes will still be there. Typically, the opportunity, the usage, the shot attempts are there as well. He just didn't take that many shots today, and that really hurt him. So he had 3 steals. He had a rebound. He still contributed in the game overall, but I think this game we see him get back up to 8, 9, 10 shots. I do feel a little bit more confident in Joey B here, and I will have some definite exposure here at that 5.9 price. Now we're going to have to make some sacrifices because of the short slate, and we may have to play some values that we're not that comfortable with. The nice thing is there is enough plays in the mid-range where we can go semi-balanced if we want to. I don't want to be filling my lineups up with Chaney Johnson and Dylan Cardwell, players like that, although Cardwell had a nice second half. I want to be able to put players who have higher floors and are somewhat safe, especially with the way we've seen these conference tournaments go. I said it last night. Mike Randall said it, like tired legs, not necessarily a thing. It is for shooters, and we saw that in games tonight. But overall, guys who are getting rebounds, contributing in other ways besides three-point shooting aren't affected as negatively. But there's definitely some tired leg situations going. But we're just seeing some sluggish play come as well, and that's led to some inconsistent performances this week from players that we normally can count on. And Janai Broom had a fairly pedestrian game here, despite being in a great opportunity, a great spot, great leverage at 17%, just didn't pan out. But we get another shot with Janai Broom, and we got to love that. Looking at the various options here, just pulling up the quick and dirty version of the sheet before I make edits. Max Shulga, Sean Barstow, as expected, both over 4x in initial projections. Joey Bamisile at 25 minutes, just under. Zeb Jackson, just under as well at 33 minutes. No other values on this team that I want to utilize. On the Duquesne side, it's tough because Day Grant is an excellent overall look. If you ignore matchups and you just play off of price only, that 6-7 tag for him is far too cheap. He is a 8K player here at this stage. Now he puts up 39 and drops from 7.2 to 6.7. Make that make sense. Playing 35 plus minutes in each of his last 5 games, and he's taken no fewer than 13 shots in any of those, which includes a red hot 6 of 9 from deep today. He hit 5 of 11 against VCU back on March 5th when they just played, and that resulted in a 69-59 victory on the road for Duquesne's. Day Grant played exceptionally well. He's not going to give us a typical high amount of peripherals, although he had 7 assists against St. Louis. He had 5 rebounds against George Washington in his latest 5-game stretch. We're going to need him to score, and he's going to have to score a lot. 20-plus real points. But the 6-7 tag is just very appealing. So he's somebody I'm going to be thinking on for a considerable amount of time. Had he been 8K like I think he should be, or even 7.5, that might have been a little easier for me to pull away from, but 6-7 is going to suck me in for sure. Jimmy Clark struggled against VCU in their prior matchup. They held him to 3 of 14 shooting. They really prioritized him defensively. I suspect that they will be a little more spread out this time with Day Grant. Clark is somebody who doesn't have to score a bunch to pay off. His peripherals are much more solid than Day Grant, but you see 16 plus real points over the course of his last 4 games, and that masterful 18, 8, and 6 performance against St. Bonnie's today. One of the best he has produced this season. He's had some bigger games by far, but that was one of the more complete performances. Looking at his rates, they're fantastic. 78% of the available minutes, 29% usage rate, 29% shot rate. His assist rate sits right around 27.5%, 15th highest steals rate in the country, and he's drawing right around 4.6 fouls per 40 and a respectable 34% from long range on 184 attempts. Day Grant, also phenomenal, high shot rate, high usage rate. He is the real deal. As far as anybody else on this Duquesne's team, I don't think we can get there. So you're going to make a decision. It's going to be none, or it's going to be Day Grant, possibly Clark. D. Michelle is sitting there under 5K, still relatively cheap. I don't think we're going to be able to get more than a 3x return on him. I do anticipate this slate being much lower scoring than the one that just transpired here tonight with the Grand Canyon game, Long Beach State, all of those other teams, obviously. So 15-16 from D. Michelle might not be a death sentence. It's not that appealing, I know, but he's on the floor for 30-plus minutes. They're going to continue to use him, and he has shown some upside. He hasn't done it lately, but the end of February, he had a couple of nice performances, so we know he can actually do it. He had 15 against VCU in their prior meeting as well. As far as anybody else, Dixon is not going to be possible as a non-starter, playing less than 20 minutes off the bench. Don't need to get into that. Drame starting at 5'3", somewhat interesting. Banging with the VCU guys, if he could stay out of any inexplicable or unforeseen foul trouble, perhaps we can look there. Not an exciting option. None of these Duquesne's guys are. I did see some Zach Edey lineups out there earlier, or some other pay-up options where guys were stuffing, 2 or 3 studs. I did see a lot of Dusan Mahorich out there at 3.7K. He had a return of 7 fantasy points, but sometimes you have to do some heinous things like roster Dusan Mahorich to get in some of those higher price studs. So perhaps we see some Dusan there. I'm not running around looking to roster him by any means. Hey, Murray Lime, king of the bracket. I'm going to call it the Mania, but you can call it what you want. Definitely an exciting tournament. And then real quick, Johnny, I find it hilarious. Monson got canned, then made the tourney. Yeah, that was one of those Hopkins, Lorenzo Romar situations. Romar getting, fired at Pepperdine. He got to coach as long as they lasted in the WCC tournament. They won a game, lost a game, then he's done. Mike Hopkins would have been able to, initially they said, if you win the Pac-12 tournament, we'll retain you. Then they decided real quick not to do that. He was going to get fired regardless. He did get to coach the one game in the Pac-12 tournament. But yeah, Monson, it would be a huge story if they won a game in the tourney. What would they do? Would they change their mind? I don't think he has any clauses in his contract like Coach Keats. Maybe he doesn't have the agent that Keats has, but it would be interesting to see if they won a game, or two. How would you get rid of Monson? And maybe people don't know this. I don't know how you wouldn't, but Monson started that Gonzaga Mania, way back in the late 90s. Richie Fromm and company, Casey Calvary, that Gonzaga team that put themselves on the map. Monson was the dude. Took the money and went to go coach for Minnesota. Didn't work out there. Been at Long Beach State for a long time. It's not a scrub by any means. The guy can coach. He's just had a rough patch here. And Long Beach State making the tournament for the first time since 2012. All right, next game on the slate, Auburn versus Florida. SEC title game. This should be fun. These are two teams I'm glad to see. I would have been okay with Texas A&M pulling it out today against Florida. Obviously, we like our Texas A&M options, but they did fade there 95-90. Florida under Todd Golden. I think got to call him the real deal at this point. 13th in offensive efficiency per Ken Palm, 18th fastest tempo, right around 90th in defensive efficiency. Offensive rebounding efficiency, they're 6th best in the country. This is a Florida team that can definitely hang with anyone in America. They're facing Auburn. Now, you go back to the last time these two teams met. You have to go to Saturday, February 10th. It was a 81-65 victory for Florida. It was a game in which I really felt Auburn could do well in. And this is where Auburn, struggling on the road for a stretch. They were unbeatable at home. They go to Gainesville, and they just never really were competitive in that game. Janai Broome, for him, struggled 14-7. He did have some early foul trouble, similar to what we just saw today from him. Jalen Williams, a non-factor. KD Johnson had 12 off the bench. Overall, Auburn just didn't play their game. There weren't many fantasy assets from that one. Florida, they had many. Riley Qgale off the bench, and I don't want to be getting into using Qgale, but we might have to. 22 real points, hit 3 of 7 from downtown, 4 rebounds. Walter Clayton had 20 and 6. Zion Pullen had 19 and 6. Micah Hanlogden had 5 blocks, 3 steals, 9 rebounds. Tyree Samuel had 8 and 2. It wasn't his best game. Will Richard, Alex Condon, and Thomas Howe weren't really factors in that one. Overall, it was just an okay game, especially for the prices that some of these options are. We definitely want exposure to this game on both sides. Now, I am going to continue to try to stray away from utilizing front court players against this Auburn front court. Now, I did get caught on South Carolina using Colin Murray-Boyles because he's just been so great. Auburn did a good job getting him into foul trouble. So what that means for perennial foul trouble players such as Micah Hanlogden and Alex Condon, it's going to be tough to really utilize them in this matchup. The problem is, though, especially with Micah Hanlogden, his price is uber appealing on a slate that is condensed, and we need to find value. And we know the upside for Micah Hanlogden is massive here. I don't mind using him as I go to build lineups tonight, especially as I'm hammering out those $20 lineups trying to chase that 10K. I'm going to have to utilize some of Micah Hanlogden. I don't have to like it, but I'm going to do it because 4-9 is a starter. He has not been able to eclipse 20 minutes in any of his last 5 games. Why do you ask? It should be obvious. He can't stop fouling. He has gotten extremely handsy in this SEC tournament. 3 fouls against Georgia, which included 2 in the first 5 minutes. 3 against Bama, which included 2 in the first half. And then he had 4 against Texas A&M, which, stop me if you heard this, 2 fouls in the first half. It's been a tough go for Micah. Now, he had 32 against Auburn in their prior meeting, but the big thing there was he was able to play 27 minutes. If Micah plays 27 minutes, if he even plays 20 to 22 minutes at 4-9, there's no doubt in my mind that he absolutely crushes his value. It's simply a play of, does he stay out of foul trouble or not? Now, because of his first half fouls, it's led to other guys getting minutes. And then we're seeing in the second half, even if Micah doesn't pick up that third or fourth, we're seeing him play less. We're seeing Thomas Howe play more minutes at the 4, small ball 5. We're seeing Riley Qgale play some 4. Tyree Samuel's moving to center. Alex Condon is playing more. Now, Condon played 28 minutes against Texas A&M today. That's a dream. The dream, one of Condon or Hanlogden. If one of them stays out of foul trouble, the other one goes in and picks up those fouls, they're going to eat. Now, we've seen a lot of games this year where both, especially lately, have gotten into foul issues. But Condon was able to play through it. 28 minutes, he put up 26.5 fantasy points. He's priced a little bit high at 5.7, nearly 6K. You don't want to play them together, but one of Condon versus Micah Hanlogden does make sense, even though the matchup isn't great, just because both are cheap, and that is a minutes-based play there for me. I'm a big DVP guy. Matchups matter more to me than they do most people, but I do play cheap guys in any matchup when I have to, and smaller slates usually force us into it. And I've said it before, we get into those slates in the tournament where it's Elite 8 and Final 4. We start having to play guys against Houston, Iowa State, things like that. So it's when we get these smaller slates, we have to kind of go back on some of our strategies that we have employed all season. Tyree Samuel's a bit expensive at 7.3, but uber consistent. You just pretty much can peg him for 30-ish fantasy points each and every time he steps out there. He did struggle against Bama. Major foul troubles, was under 20. So there is going to be times where Samuel has to play the 5. He's done good there, but Auburn's front court is physical. That's not the most ideal situation or scenario for Samuel. I don't like Will Richard in this game. I think he struggles. He did have a banger of a game today against Texas A&M, hit 4 triples. He's been a very streaky player. You see, he's on this every other game rotation. He had 34 against Bama, 11 against Vandy. Then he put up 34 against Georgia, 18 against Bama, and then today he puts up 27. Obviously, that has no true bearing on what he's going to do. But if you believe in that kind of stuff and you're superstitious, can't imagine who would be superstitious around here. Will Richard might not have a very good game. I don't like him dealing with the athletes of Auburn. Auburn has such a deep team. They can continue to throw these super athletic, high energy guys at you. He was only able to garner 7 fantasy points in their prior meeting with Auburn. I do not see this one going very well for Richard. Thomas Howell is interesting, or was interesting heading into this one. Now he's priced at 4.7. His minutes were at 13, and you saw the prior 3 of his last 4, he played over 20. And again, a lot of that had to do with Alex Condon couldn't stay on the floor. Micah Hanlogden couldn't stay on the floor. So his minutes are directly tied to those guys, and if their foul issues exist. Now that he's almost 5K, only 200 more for Micah Hanlogden. There's just no sane way to play him over Micah unless you're running multiple builds, 10, 20, 30 plus. Then you can get that exposure. But if you're using him in a main build or a 3 max over Micah, that's just a little bit too psychotic for me. That's Chris Clow territory. By the way, love Chris Clow, longtime friend and fan of the show, has mania seats. Very sharp guy, but he is a very psychotic player that would do just that. Riley Q goes there at 4.8. The secret there, if you think or you have a read on his minutes, he's going to pay off. He's going to pay 4.8 off at 22 minutes. He's not going to pay it off at a simple 17. Do you know how many minutes he's going to play? I honestly don't. I don't have the Gray's Sports Almanac to tell you the answer on Riley Kugel. I did have him as a breakout star this year. Hasn't really worked out. Continues to be cheap. He's an excellent GPP value, and I think his ownership could end up being a little bit higher than it maybe necessarily needs to because of the short slate. So that's going to put me under the field. I just don't want to be overweight on a player like that with his volatility. That leaves us with the top 2 options as far as price, usage, opportunities, and minutes go. Walter Clayton at 7.5, Zion Pullen at 7.4. We have officially reached, tournament play. Guards win you games in tournaments, the old cliche. Walter Clayton had a quote-unquote down game today for him. Ended up with just 26. Shows you how high of a floor he has, though. I do like this spot for him against Auburn. I think he's going to be able to generate a lot, not only hitting threes, but I think he'll get to the foul line against this Auburn team. He did shoot 9 of 10 at the line against them in their prior meeting, and this one could play out very similar to what we saw in the Alabama game when he shot 11 of 11 from the foul line. I think he's going to have a very good opportunity. Some of those Auburn guards that are going to be on him are younger, underdeveloped options. They're harassers to be certain, but Walter Clayton is a crafty upperclassman who is going to be able to get to the line, I think, almost at will. So I do like Clayton for that matter alone. Pullen is 100 cheaper at 7.4. To me, he's more of the secondary play, maybe the GPP look, Walter Clayton being the main team option. Getting to Auburn, this is a spot. Anytime Florida's on the slate, I like targeting against them for obvious reasons. They play a style that's conducive to fantasy production. However, Auburn is going to be this team that really just makes it difficult to trust anyone outside of Janai Broome and maybe even Chad Baker. You're going to see a legit 10 to 11 guys playing minutes. And that was the case today, as we saw 10 different players get 11 plus minutes. And it's that same thing. If you watched any amount of shows, even if you watched one show where I've covered Auburn, you know that the vaunted 18 to 22 minute, spot for Denver Jones, Dylan Cardwell, Katie Johnson, Chaney Johnson, the list goes on. Makes it hard to play any of them. Perhaps you hit and you get a good shooting night from somebody like Denver Jones, who did shoot 5 of 10 in the Mississippi State game. Perhaps Trey Donaldson goes for, a big number, hits threes. Aiden Holloway racks up steals. You'll have those games, but on a simple, consistent game-to-game basis, good luck trying to figure out which one of those guys is going to do well. Katie Johnson had nearly 20 2 games ago. People chased that. He played only 12 minutes here against Mississippi State. He had 4 points, 1 rebound, was unfortunately a big bust and a brick. Game-to-game basis, just not going to happen. That keeps us in the region of Jalen Williams, Chad Baker, and Janai Broome. Those are really, when you're talking about Auburn, the only 3 options that you can really truthfully use and trust. Price-wise, I still feel Janai Broome is too cheap at 8.6. Anytime he's below 9K and closer to, now he's over 8.5, but closer to that 8.5 range, he just presents a amazing opportunity and slate breaking upside. He was very low on today. Unfortunately, those 2 quick fouls in the first half just ruined him. He had a very nice second half. Had he not gotten enough foul trouble, I'm very confident he would have been knocking on the door of 40. Didn't work out. I suspect he will be somewhat owned because there aren't a lot of options. Obviously, when you're looking at pay-ups, you basically have to decide Yaxel Lendenberg, Terry Shannon, Janai Broome, perhaps Eric Gaines. I don't really put him in those 3 categories. And I think most people are going to go to Terry Shannon because he's a guard in March. It's that simple, and he can score in bunches. 30 real points seems inevitable. Yaxel Lendenberg, his upside above Janai Broome just seems like higher. Broome might be the lowest owned of the 3. In fact, I think he will be. And that gives another really good opportunity for leverage players here in a large field GPP setting. I do think he bounces back as well. Again, he had a pretty mediocre game against Florida for him. It was 27.5 points. He shot 1 of 8 at the foul line. That obviously can't happen. He's going to have to get those free throws to go down, and I think he's going to have plenty of opportunities to do so going up against this Florida front court that just can't keep their hands to themselves. Broome does draw 6 fouls per 40, and people need to stop overlooking him. This has no bearing merit or anything to do with DFS, but he is second on the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings. He does have a 29.5% usage rate, 30.5% shot rate. That has much more bearing on DFS. A combined rebounding rate well over 35%, top 50 in defensive rebounding percentage at 25.3%, which is truly impressive. Top 25 block rate, also shoots 36% from long range on 75 attempts. So you have a versatile scorer who can not only do it from the block and low post moves, but also step out and shoot threes. Achilles heel sometimes of Broome is his free throw shooting, where he shoots an abysmal 59%. Not quite Hack-a-Broome level, if you will, but that's definitely an area of his game he needs to shore up here as we get into the tournament and beyond. I do like him a lot. I am going to have exposure there. I think that just makes way too much sense from a leverage standpoint. Jalen Williams is cheap. I think today we saw Jalen Williams, like vintage Jalen Williams, 13-4-4, put up 27.5, dealt with a myriad of injuries, ailments, soreness, hadn't been really himself, played less minutes. Played a couple off the bench. Then he got back in the starting lineup. We saw him playing these low 20s. He played 31 minutes against Mississippi State today. That shows me that he's to a level now where he can handle those minutes. He was typically one of the few players on Auburn this season to eclipse 30 minutes with any regularity. That 6-1 price point is definitely way too cheap if he's going to be in that role now. And I do believe he returns to that. He was absolutely awful 3 of 10 shooting against Florida in their first meeting. I know it's not selling it, but I think we see him bounce back here in a nice way. Seeing what he did against Mississippi State definitely has my attention. Love Chad Baker. I want him to get cheaper. Put up 24 today, solid. We've got him at 6.5. That's relatively strong price for him. Just their X factor. Hits threes, can facilitate the offense. He has had some foul issues lately, which has not been great, but I certainly am going to be involved with Chad Baker as well, and I like him overall. I think he's going to have a strong tournament. Temple versus UAB. This is it for all the marbles here in the American. Who would have thought these two teams would be fighting it out? UAB 6-point favorites, total of 137.5. Temple has continued to just defy the odds here, winning game after game and knocking off some of the best teams in their conference. Today, they got an absolute masterful performance, and the main reason they were able to outlast FAU, Hyzier Miller, who hit 5 of 10 from long range, just hot in that second half. He could not miss. Temple was phenomenal. 39 fantasy points for him, 21, 4, 2, and 4 steals. Comes in at 7.8 against UAB. I certainly think that is a playable price. I don't know that I'll be getting there to him. I think that the reliance on scoring for Hyzier Miller makes him a little bit risky, and I'm not comfortable using a shooter there playing what will amount to being his 5th game in 5 days. We've seen already shooters are the ones who end up with those tired legs, not so much the other players or other archetypes, if you will. Other guys on Temple to really consider here. Jordan Riley, who is the only one beyond Tysier Miller capable of playing the entire game. He is relatively cheap and fits a more balanced approach to your lineups at 6.3K. He did have some down games there heading into the week, but he has put together back-to-back games over 28 fantasy points and back-to-back double-doubles at that, rebounding at an extremely highly rate. 11 points, 10 rebounds in the surprising win over Charlotte yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago at this point, and a 16-10 performance against FAU. The game against UAB, he shot 3 of 8. They got their absolute doors blown off. They gave up 100 points to UAB. This was back on March 7th. And Riley, this was during his down streak. He only had 12 fantasy points, but I do like him quite a bit here. There will be volume. I'm a big fan. I think they're going to play him 38, 39 minutes. This does mean that we're going to have to back off today's almost essential. And it's crazy because Zion Stanford was 3-5. And this shows you, like, if you're going to pay up for guys, you have to play cheapies that just have no floor at all. And he ended up being 35 to 40% owned today. He had a 0. So he didn't put up a negative number. I guess that's a bonus, but he did drop the goose egg in 7 minutes of action against FAU. And this is coming off of, 17 minutes against Charlotte, 17 against SMU, 29 against UTSA. Like, they had been using him. And even if he would have given us 10 today, we would have been happy with that. But he gave us a 0. Now he's 4-3. It's going to be real tough to utilize him. If you want to get somebody from Temple that's not the top 2 options, you could look at Piccarelli, who's 3-6 and get starts, but his minutes are split amongst usually Jaleel White, Shane Dezonie, and it was Zion Stanford, even though he barely played. Shane Dezonie, interestingly enough, did play 26 minutes today. He did have 9 points, 3 rebounds, and a steal, 3 of 6 at the line. 5K, though. I'm a little uneasy there, but at 26 minutes, perhaps we can, compromise ourselves a little bit and play one of those lower tier Temple guys. I do think talent-wise, Jaleel White's the best of the cheaper Temple options, but his minutes are nowhere near Shane Dezonie's, and it makes it very difficult to want to use him or justify it. That leaves us with Steve Settle, who wasn't too good today against FAU. Vlad Golden just owned the glass. It was a very simple case there. But we have seen Settle play pretty well in this tournament. He had 33 against SMU, 29 against Charlotte. He was awful against UAB in their first matchup. Again, Temple just really did not play too well in that game. For me, I'm looking at Jordan Riley at 6'3", maybe Dezonie at 5K. And if you want a total punt and prayer with Piccarelli, go right ahead, but he's probably going to play 15 minutes as a starter. Not necessarily an ideal spot. Pulling up the game against UAB in which they gave up 100 piece to them. Yaxel Lendenberg went nuts, 19 and 14. I do not believe Temple possesses the front court option to keep Yaxel off the glass and just scoring at will. That means Yaxel is probably going to be semi-priority for us. He is expensive. We have to make it work. We don't have a 10-7 Edie. We weren't playing him anyways. Yaxel, for his actual price, is a little bit cheaper than what we've been seeing on him, and I think we can make one of those work. You may not be able to play Broom with him. You may not be able to play Scary Terry with him. But if you only can play one of those 3 pay-ups, it has to, in my opinion, it has to be Yaxel Lendenberg. Also in that game, we saw 17 points, 10 assists for Eric Gaines. Alejandro Vasquez had 18 points and 5 rebounds. Christian Coleman, who was in the midst of his just ham streak that he's on, 19 and 7. Daniel Ortiz had 12 and 3. He hit 3 triples in that game. Now, UAB, there was a little bit of concern today because there's people asking like, hey, Vasquez got ejected yesterday. Is he going to play? Obviously he was. Now, it did throw some people off because he didn't start. So there was some worry like, hey, is he being suspended for the first half? And they didn't say anything. They did start Daniel Ortiz, but Ortiz did get the rug pull, played 16 minutes. Vasquez played 29 off the bench, had a usage rate of nearly 30%, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, and a steal. It was a very complete performance for Vasquez there, and he was a big reason why they were able to beat South Florida today. We also saw Efren Johnson score 21. Eric Gaines scored 20. Yaxel, for him, it was a small double-double, 13 and 11, but still a double-double nonetheless. And Christian Coleman has continued his elite play. He had 15 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal before ending up fouling out in 26 minutes. Pulling up UAB's pricing, we are going to want to stack. People always ask, like, what game or team do you want to be overweight on? Who are you going to mini stack? Who are you going to full stack? My answer every single time to any of those questions over the next 8 hours is going to be UAB. Yaxel is obvious at 9.3, has elite rates, an elite rim protector, an elite rebounder. Then we have some really obvious plays, one being Alejandro Vasquez, who's priced at 5.2, coming off of a 30 spot. You can expect him to be industry chalk, and we're talking about 4-game slate chalk, which means 70% or higher in single entry, high dollar, and cash, 50% or higher in large field GPPs. Don't overthink it. Even if Vasquez doesn't start, I suspect he will start. It's kind of similar to what we saw with Kashawn Pryor earlier. Didn't start the game before, then he started today. I think Vasquez will start, but clearly, even if he doesn't, he's going to play close to 30 minutes. That is a pretty, unless we see news stating otherwise, that's a pretty big guarantee. He's only 5'2", Vasquez, obvious, core, chalk. Don't overthink that one. Play him in all your lineups. Then a decision gets tough, because if you've been riding with Coleman, this like streak that he's on, it's going to be tough for you to want to get off. Christian Coleman is priced at $6K, which is the highest he's been pretty much all season. 4 straight games over 20 fantasy points, 26 minutes today, 26 minutes yesterday against Wichita State, 22 against SMU, and 23 against the same Temple team. Now, Temple, this was the year where he started his streak, 32 fantasy points against them, 30, 25, 23. His production has dwindled a little bit, but he's still playing at an extremely high level, but he is priced at $6K. That's a little bit tough, but I think he continues. And that, again, Temple just doesn't have the front court options, the horses, if you will, to deal with these strong rebounding options that UAB possesses. And especially on the offensive glass, where UAB is one of the best teams in the country, they're pretty subpar when it comes to defensive rebounding opportunities, but they do get after it on the glass. And because of that, it leads to a lot of second and third and fourth opportunities for bunnies and easy backs, baskets, putbacks, what have you, from Yaxel and now from Christian Coleman. Coleman's rebounding rate has emerged. He's over 20% there, 9.8% offensive rebounding rate. Yaxel, his elite rebounding rates almost over 40%. We love it. 7.5% block rate. Those are two guys we certainly want to look at. Yaxel being the priority. Coleman, one of those plays where if you've been using him, you can continue. I don't mind it. If you haven't been using him and you're late to the party, doesn't feel quite as good there to use him at $6K, but he's definitely on the line and in play. Ephraim Johnson is 4.9. He has to be considered a strong value. Now, prior to today's game against USF, he had been doing a lot of what the kids say Fitbitting in his 32, 26, 23 minutes. He doesn't have the peripherals to perform otherwise if he's not scoring at a high level. We have to have him scoring 12 plus real points to really feel good about using him in any capacity. And value is justifiably lean, and you're going to have to settle for guys. I do feel like Ephraim, we're settling a little bit, but the minutes are going to be there. The shot attempts are going to be there. And if he catches fire, he will get that 4X number that we're looking for here at 4.9. So several options. There's 4 right there. And we haven't even talked about Eric Gaines yet, who sits there at 8K. Eric Gaines will be the forgotten man because people are going to gravitate towards Yaxel. They're going to Yaxel. They're going to gravitate towards Scary Terry. Eric Gaines at 8K it's not that people don't recognize what he's been doing, because most people that are playing DFS can read box scores. So they're going to be able to look at that and see, wow, this guy is putting up some big numbers. I need to get him in. Oh, wait, I don't have enough salary to fit Eric Gaines. I can't fade Yaxel. I can't fade Scary Terry. I guess I can't play Eric Gaines. So knowing how that's going to play out, I want to be overweight on Eric Gaines. I want to have a lot of GPP exposure to Eric Gaines. And I think that right now with the way he's playing, he is almost borderline unfadeable. but we are going to be hamstrung a bit by pricing. Unless you're going to go with this all-out onslaught for UAB, which isn't a bad idea. I could see Temple breaking out hard here, missing a lot of shots, shooting under 35%, and just getting ran out of the gym. And in which case, UAB's got 4 or 5 guys at 4 or 5x plus. So Gaines is definitely in the mix. He is a leverage play, by the way, just that I see this playing out construction-wise. UAB stacks, yes, yes, and yes. All right, I'll circle back around to the chat here. I saw Ryan Schnabel had some questions about Florida. Let me just get through this last game, and then we'll pop up all the comments. Wisconsin versus Illinois, that will end the slate. Big Ten title game. Illinois, 3-point favorites, total of 149. Illinois, they, first half, Nebraska had them on the ropes. Nebraska looked like they were going to do it. They were mauling them. Rink Mass, he looked phenomenal. Second half, he disappeared. They end up losing 98-87. This Illinois offense, powered by Scary Terry, is just so formidable. Bryce Williams channeled some of his previous, past Charlotte self-scoring today. Kasai Tamanaga didn't shoot particularly well, 2 of 9 from long range, but he did have 18. Again, Rink Mass had a really nice first half. Ghost town in the second half. Juwan Gary, foul trouble galore, fouled out in 27 minutes. They just didn't have enough juice, enough offensive firepower to deal with Scary Terry, who did drop a real live 40 burger, not in 40 fantasy points, mind you, 40 actual points. 2 steals, 2 rebounds, and an assist, 40 real points. And he could do it again here in this spot against Wisconsin. That is why this Illinois team has such a formidable offense, because of Terry Shannon. If you took Terry Shannon out of the mix there, you've got Marcus Domask, you've got Ty Rogers, Quincy Gary, Luke Good can hit some threes. But right now, offensively, we're seeing some struggles. Coleman Hawkins is really struggling from long range lately. Marcus Domask has been strong peripherals wise. He did score 16 real today as well, but we saw he's had his struggles in this tournament. Ty Rogers, very strong peripherals guy, not a huge elite scoring option. Quincy Guerrier is not somebody at this stage of his career, 9 years of college. Kidding, not really. He's not the offensive option that you can rely on. And Luke Good, who made 4 of 9 from long range today, he's just not a guy that you can rely on. Dane Danger, by the way, only 6 minutes today. That one hurt. So this Illinois offense and team in general, they're all about Terry Shannon, and he is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. The 8-7 price point is cheap for him. He has scored 36, 40, and 50 in each of his last 3 games. Go back to March 2nd, the last time they played this Wisconsin team at the Badgers' house. They scored 91 against Wisconsin, 23 of which came directly from Scary Terry himself. He put up 37 fantasy points. I think we see him put 40 plus on the board. And while I just called Yaxel the premier priority pay up, it's a lot of P's. I think Terry Shannon is somebody that I would be really worried about not using. And that almost pigeonholes us into what everyone else is going to do, playing Terry and Yaxel and then going there and stuffing a bunch of lower end options. Luke Good at 3-3. Kareem Rozier at 4-1. Doosan at 3-8. It's getting real tough there to utilize these guys. Perhaps some of the Florida value, but it is doable. You're going to have to make sacrifices. And again, that's where Janai Broom and Eric Gaines just aren't going to be in many lineups, because I think most people are going to come into this thinking, I need raw points. Where am I going to get them from? Terry's going to score 35 real. Yaxel's going to have a massive 18 and 15 double-double. I got to get both of those guys in. Okay, how do I make this work? I got to click in some pretty heinous names, but if those guys each put up 50 plus, I'm feeling pretty good about the slate. That's what we're going to be dealing with. Outside of Terry Shannon, the prices aren't that cheap. Like Marcus Domask at 7-6. He did put up 49 against Wisconsin. That was a great call by Illinois superfan Scott TSU from our Discord. Domask going back home there, playing at Wisconsin. He went absolutely ballistic against them there in the former hometown. 21 shot attempts. He normally doesn't get that many shot attempts, but they really featured him there. They are much better when he's performing that way and not having to rely on Terry 100% of the time. But I just have some trust issues there with him at 7-6. Coleman Hawkins at 7-2. The upside seemingly has been shaved off. He's more of a floor play now, and he's relatively safe at the 7-2 price point, but you're not getting a ton of high upside. I don't envision him putting up like a 5-6x type of score. Maybe he gets to somewhere between 25 and 28 fantasy points. He's fine there. I just don't think it's a priority. If you land there in a more balanced approach or a last man in, I'm fine with it. Then you have what I assume will be the very highly owned Ty Rodgers, who has scored basically 30 plus fantasy points, I should say 29 plus fantasy points in back-to-back games, 32 minutes against Ohio State, 33 minutes against Nebraska, double-double against Ohio State, another 13 rebounds on the board against Nebraska. He did a fine job once Juwan Gary got into foul trouble. He just owned the glass. He did a fantastic job. Guard forward eligibility, certainly going to be in a lot of lineups. Expect Ty Rodgers to be chalk. I would probably follow suit there. Can't play Dane Danger. He's 5'5". It's just not going to happen. A bagel in 6 minutes there. He had 5 fantasy points against Wisconsin in their last meeting. This just doesn't strike me as the matchup. We're going to see a lot of AJ Storr, Chucky Hepburn versus Terry Shannon, Marcus Domask. Like, it's going to be a lot of perimeter-oriented stuff in this game, and I don't think that leaves much playing time for Dane Danger, unfortunately. Same price as Ty Rodgers. It seems quite comical, doesn't it? Quincy Guerrier at 5'6" also comes with guard forward eligibility. He had his nice game against Iowa. It seems like a long time ago when he played for Syracuse and was somebody that we could feel okay about paying 7.5, 8K for. Those days are just gone. He's 5th, 6th in the pecking order here. Really going to be tough for me to utilize him as well. We did see Justin Harmon and have seen his minutes dwindle. He's a solid enough defender, and that's why he played a lot more earlier. But now that they've needed some offense, he has not been able to get in the game because of his lack of offensive ability at this level. So he's not probably going to play very much. It does make Luke Good somewhat interesting at 3-3 in 15 minutes, knocking down 4 of 9 from downtown against Nebraska. That's his main job when he's in there shooting threes, but that is a very lean play. The good news is nearly min price, so you don't need a whole hell of a lot. If he hits 3 triples there, you're feeling quite good with that. And he had 6 rebounds today as well. That's something that he has shown in the past when given minutes. So with that, and he comes with guard forward eligibility. Lots of guys on this Illinois team that you can fix, mix and match. You got flexibility with the way that you build. Good is somebody I would expect to see in some of those Shannon Yaxel stacks for sure. On the Wisconsin side, AJ Storr, his ownership will go down because he's priced at 7K. He is playing phenomenal. 40 minutes against Purdue, 36 against Northwestern. He took 23 shots today, even with Chucky Hepburn back in the mix. Hepburn had a strong performance, 37, 22 real against Purdue today. That has got his price skyrocketing back up there as he sits at 6'6". Tyler Wall's cheap at 6'2". He was in massive foul trouble today, fouled out in 17 minutes. He was in massive foul trouble yesterday, had 3 and 24, which included 2 in the first half. Doesn't feel too good to use him, but he is cheap enough to utilize. And he had a really nice performance at home against Illinois back on March 2nd, 20.7 rebounds on his way to 35. So there's upside there for Walt if he can stay out of foul trouble. Steven Crowell is priced up to 6'5". That is phenomenal. I didn't want to have to think about playing him at 5'5", 5'8" here. He's been way too underpriced the last few slates. Obviously, the Purdue game, we knew he was going to get into foul trouble. He actually made it 31 minutes before he fouled out. But again, his rebounding number suffered because going up against that Zach Edey frontcourt, and he was in major foul trouble at home against Illinois in their prior matchup. Not a lot of interest for me in Crowell. Again, I want the perimeter-oriented options in this game. John Blackwell, went down to 16 minutes with Chucky Hepburn back and starting. It makes Blackwell really unplayable. It makes Kamari McGee, who's priced at 3.5, really unappealing, borderline unplayable as well. That leaves us with Max Klesmit, who's priced at 5.3. If we woke up and Hepburn couldn't go, Klesmit would be the dude we'd have to use in all of our lineups. The nice thing is his game, he's expanded it lately, and he's in this Big Ten tournament after kind of limping into it a bit, having failed to score more than 20 fantasy points or in 4 of his last 5 prior. He has now put up some huge numbers. The Maryland game, they blew their doors off. He wasn't needed. Played 23 minutes. You can throw that one out. Closer game against Northwestern, 11 shot attempts, 35 minutes. He put up 26. And today against Purdue in 34 minutes, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 12 points, 2 steals, 30 fantasy points. How very Braden Smith-esque of him against Braden Smith's team there in Purdue. He's only 5'3". I'm not sitting here wanting to stack up Wisconsin. I just don't think we're going to be able to pay for Storr. I don't think we're going to want to pay for Hepburn. In fact, I don't want to pay for Hepburn. I won't. I usually don't. And if he beats me, fine. I'm not using Crowell. I don't trust Wall. Where does that leave us? That leaves us with Max Klesmit, who I think will be popular, priced at 5.3. We're going to be jamming in a bunch of these guys between 5 and 6 into our lineups. Klesmit, definitely that guy, and especially the way that he's playing right now, I do think he has a solid opportunity to continue playing well here with the tournament title on the line. Going back, he did hang 27 fantasy points on Illinois in that loss. He played 39 minutes, 16, 5, and 3. Yes, I am in on Max Klesmit, and that is the first time all season long where I have adamantly and excitedly said those words. All right, let's get into the questions here. Let's get into cores. Let's get into PrizePicks. Let's do it all. It's 12:36 on the West Coast. The slate's going to start at 10 a.m. I do want to get at the opportunity to sleep for an hour. Even though we say we sleep in May, we got to at least sleep a little bit, right? So let's go through the comments, and then we'll give cores. All right, here it is. Ryan Schnabel says, biggest question with Florida, will Qgel DMP again? Got my eyes on 3.1K Aberdeen. I did not see anything like discipline related, injury related, like for Qgel. He's just been really inconsistent, right? And defensively, he gets burned a lot. So one of the beats for Florida, I read this earlier, that I believe works for SB Nation, he had said the reason for Qgel not playing much, if at all, was because of how well Denzel Aberdeen was playing. I mean, Aberdeen had a phenomenal game, and I know I didn't talk about him really at all there. We've been burned on these plays so many times chasing them. I mean, he put up 30 in 23 minutes, 4 or 5 from long range, 4 steals. Like, the play just reeks of he's going to play 5 minutes in this title game, right? So it's tough to say. There was no injuries. There was no discipline related things. There was no reason other than Aberdeen was playing well. Qgel just couldn't get into the game. He has had some difficulties defensively. He's had turnover issues all season long. Confidence has been kind of up and down there as well. I mean, coming into the season, I wasn't the only one that thought Qgel was going to break out. Most publications pegged Qgel as a huge breakout star. It just didn't work out. But we've been in this situation with Florida before. It was on the Thomas Howell game, right? All those fouls for Micah, Condon, Samuel. He ends up just absolutely barrel rolling Georgia. This was back in mid-February. Played 26 minutes, put up 31. A lot of people were like, oh my God, I got to run to use him. This guy is legit. We can't miss out on him. He played 13 minutes the next game, 7 fantasy points. 11 the next game, 6. He did throw a 20 out there against South Carolina, but it would be very shocking if Aberdeen played that level of minutes. He is also going to be dealing, like I said, with an endless amount of bodies that Auburn has, and really just the game of his life. 4 or 5 from long range. That's going to be tough to really reenact 4 steals, that's going to be tough. Obviously, we don't need him to do that at 3-1 min price. 2 threes will suffice. 1 to 2 steals will suffice. But that's going to be a tough one. I think that there'll be people who do use him as they're trying to jam in all those studs. But, we've just been really, not us in specific, but industry wise, I pay attention to ownership and look, these kind of plays that blip or pop like that, the very next game, more often than not, they play way less. Coming into the Pac-12 tournament, I found a interview, write-up, whatever, by the Washington State guys talking about Isaiah Watts, the freshman, who coming into the Pac-12 tournament had some really big performances. Hey, Andres Jakomovsky, he's got injuries. He's banged up. They're going to try and rest him. We're going to be playing Watts a ton. They end up playing Watts single-digit minutes in each of their games in the Pac-12 tournament. So it's tough. GPP-wise, you're running multiple lineups? Absolutely. Get Aberdeen exposure in that 10K to first. But if you're talking about a single entry, you're running one build, I don't know that it can work. You can bagel at 3-1 and still pan out, though, especially on FanDuel. All right, moving on. Let's see what else we got here. Got a Final Four prediction here. Purdue, Houston, UConn, Iowa State. How very contrarian of you, Johnny. I will say I don't think Purdue's going to go with Braden Smith banged up. I don't trust them. Houston's going to need Juwan Roberts real damn quick. Iowa State looks like the real deal. And I've been saying since One Shining Moment 2023 that UConn is a prime back-to-back contender. They look unbeatable to me. Trevor Vanden Bosch, my guy. Shannon Jr. points have been free all tourney. Yeah, keep popping that point prop out there. Blackwell came back but left with a knee injury limp in the game today. Good to know. Yeah, Wisconsin has been banged up galore. But even if he does play, it seems unlikely that he would get a huge minutes with Hepburn back, right? So just can't use him. And Ryan says, yeah, feels like a chase. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you're running multiple lineups, like I said, there's no harm in it, but Jesus, it just lately we've just been getting look at today with Zion Stanford. We just have been getting absolutely decimated with these kind of plays. And Stanford had more than just one game. Coming into it, he had played 17 plus minutes in 5 straight. He had scored 12 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5, which includes a 31, a 13, and a 23. Felt pretty damn good about Zion Stanford today, honestly, and they gave him 7 minutes. So you don't know. It's really tough to say for sure. I wish I had a more definitive answer and a more, substantial lean one way or the other, but unfortunately I don't. I will do some more digging on message boards and stuff, but unfortunately I did that with Isaiah Watts, and that resulted in me being lied to by the team beats. All right, core-wise, let's get into this core right quick. See what we got here. By the way, Texas Southern and always in the tournament. Seems like they're always in the tournament, right? Like they have dudes they pull from the P5 level. Johnny Jones, you might not remember the LSU years for Jones. They were lackluster, but seemingly always gets Texas Southern into the tournament. Seemed like a foregone conclusion, especially with Deion Stroud, who had played so well over the past month of the season, former UTEP and Fresno State transfer. Oh, and Eastern Washington. He's played for 4 teams in 4 years. No big deal. They got beat today by Grambling. So Grambling State into the tournament there, which is an interesting development. All right, core. Let's get the right page up here. By the way, Auburn guys, absolutely Broom at Broom projects so very well. And it's gonna be tough not to want to play Janai Broom. Shannon also projects right now under. This will be controversial. What are we going to give Shannon? Let's give Shannon 39 minutes. Let's just give him the whole game. Right at 36 fantasy points. I got Janai Broom at nearly 42 at 29 minutes. Obviously, if it was that easy, we would never lose, and it's not. And looking at it, I would still rather play Shannon over Broom if I had to choose one, or Yaxel. but just showing it like rates wise, Janai Broom's underpriced there at 8.6. All right, core for me, and then obviously there's going to be some major overlap, so we're going to have to just deal with that. Alejandro Vasquez, that's core play number one, just absolute no-brainer at 5.2. It would make 0 sense to fade him in a single entry main lineup. 0 cents. Core play number two, as payups go, I'm going to go with Yaxel Lendenberg. That's 2 UAB guys. I'm really leaning towards this UAB stack. Just makes way too much sense not to do it. So that's where my head is at. As far as like what payups I'm going to get to, I got to play Yaxel. There's no getting away from it. And then I think Ty Rogers and Max Klesmit, like those guys are in the conversation for taking the third core spot for us. I'll kind of do it as like a 3A, 3B. I think both are going to be majorly owned. Neither have put up the kind of season-long rates to where they're going to project all that well in the sheet. But that's going to be one that, with our eyeballs, we know they're playing a lot of minutes. They're playing well. We need to use them. So that would be the core that I would be starting with right now. Going over to PrizePicks, we've been hitting those Goblin and Demon plays up. Obviously, Goblins, less payout, lower numbers. Demons, higher payouts, higher numbers. Okay, we're all on the same page there. Loving this Yale versus Brown game. Like, I'm so sad it's not on the slate. Nana Awusu Anane. Brown always has like a really elite front court type of option they have for multiple seasons now. His rebounding rate, elite 31% combined. He plays 82% of the available minutes. He's a bit undersized, but in the Ivy League, you're not dealing with a bunch of 7-footers with regularity. Elite rim protection, going to be a key cog, and he was today as well. Had a massive, massive game. His rebounding totals in that one, 15. His rebounding total here on PrizePicks, 8. I do like the over 8. I'm going to be taking that, and I feel extremely good about that against Yale. That is my PrizePicks play number one, starting with rebounds. Points-wise, there are several interesting options here. Keno Lilly Jr., I'm sticking with the Ivy League for a minute, plays the 5th most minutes in the country, percentage-wise, 93% of the available minutes. He has a 31% shot rate, shooting about 34% from long range, 255 attempts. He is a big-time scoring option, and it's a two-man game between Keno and Nana. These two guys are the main reason Brown even is playing in this championship game. They'll be the main reason if they are able to win and get the auto bid. With Lilly, there is a Demon play available at 18.5, a Goblin play available at 14.5, and these are real points. His normal sits in right there at 16.5. Which one would we like to take? He scored 27 today against Princeton, 26 against Yale in their prior matchup on March 9th to the end of the regular season. That one did go to overtime. They ended up beating Yale 84-81. This is in the midst of their 7-game winning streak. He had 26 points on 3 of 10 from long-range shooting, 7 of 9 on 2-point field goals, 19 shot attempts. 16 points against Harvard, 13 against Dartmouth. They ended up blowing Dartmouth out. He played a little bit less, took far less shots. This is going to be a game in which he probably has to take 15-plus shots. I'm not too worried about him. And then the game that they lost to Yale back on January 9th by a score of 80-70, that was a home game. They beat Yale on the road right before the season ended, but he also scored 23 actual points against Yale on their floor. Or that was on his home game, sorry. 4 of 11 from long range. Overall, he took 20 shots in that one. I'm very confident the volume will be there for Keno. So we're going to go down and hit the over 14.5. Goblin play at 14.5. His normal at 16.5. And then we're going to hit up that Demon play at 18.5 as well. So all 3 Keno Lilly points props, we're slamming the over. I'm going to be marching myself off to the DraftKings Sportsbook in the morning in hopes that there'll be some prop betting opportunities on the Ivy League game. There should be. There was today. Keno Lilly, very high on him. I love Brown. Love Yale. I think either of these teams will be interesting in the tournament. Obviously, Brown's going to be short state as a 15 or 16 seed. Yale might be a 13 or a 14. But just from a actual standpoint of a one-game DFS and props, I don't care which one wins. I like both. I'm riding Keno Lilly and his points props in this one. All right, scrolling down, just want to make sure that nothing changed. It usually doesn't, but I want to give out a bad number. Terry Shannon's 21.5 points. Keep slamming the over? Probably should. His Goblin number is 19.5. His Demon number is 23.5. I think I'd hit the 19.5 and the 21.5 still on Terry Shannon. He's just going to continue to score and score and score. Speaking of scoring, AJ Storr, also a high-level scorer, recently over 14.5 points. That is his Goblin number. We'll hit that over. And then Max Klesmit over 9.5 points. Those are my prize picks options heading into tomorrow. There will be some fantasy scores that come up there that they offer and some additional teams there too. Board's kind of lean, but what do you want? It's a 4-game slate to be expected. All right. I also played Vasquez when he got ejected. Yes. That was not very fun. Yes, Danny Wolf is a 7-footer. Ivy League doesn't have a lot of size. That is why Nana's had such success as an undersized 5. We'll see how Yale handles it. The game that went 84-81 in overtime there, Nana had 20 points. He had a couple of threes there. Had the 6 rebounds against Matt Noling, Danny Wolf, and Yusuf Basa Emma. They do have size. Yale being one of the teams that does have size there, but most of the front court in the Ivy League, they don't have those 7-footers there. Wolf had 12 and 7 in that game. Nana was making it very difficult for him when he's hitting those threes. I love this Ivy League game. I'm very disappointed that it's not going to be on the slate. Looking forward to it a bunch. Issue with Broom. Auburn runs such a deep rotation. Wished he played more minutes, but he's such a good point per minute. It may not even matter. Yeah, there for a long time this season, especially, it was like play Janai Broom over 30 minutes and he'll decimate. He had all those games where he's playing 24 and 25 and still rattling off 35 to 40 fantasy points, right? Today's game was terrible because he got the foul trouble, but then in the second half, he still did well and got opportunities, but they didn't go to him as much as they normally would. The game got a little out of hand. It was very frustrating because all those other options, when they were out there, they were taking shots and he wasn't getting the touches that you would normally see. Nice thing is there were some games there recently, late February, early March, that he was playing over 30 minutes. But right now, lately, we're seeing him right around 23 to 25. I suspect a lot of that has to do with the fact that trying to conserve energy here in the tournament as teams play 3 and 4 games in those same days. There would be no reason to save him and not play him high minutes. Excellent GPP look. I think lower ownership. If you get Janai Broom on a 4-game slate under 20%, which is potentially going to happen, that kind of upside, that kind of leverage just really is appealing and hard to get away from. A lot of bubble teams going to be nervous tomorrow. Yeah, the bubble getting very, very, very small. I think Providence is getting a raw deal. I think St. John's potentially going to get a raw deal. I wonder if they'll actually leave Patino out. I wonder if, like, if there's any other coach besides a legendary one like Patino, St. John's just like, nah. But I know that shouldn't have any bearing on it, and it won't. But, we're dealing with a committee of human beings here. And a lot of times they set the last couple of years, we've gone into Sunday games to where it didn't even matter. Like a game played out and then like the seeds were like, huh, this guy's in. And admittedly, the committee chairs would say, we had this set up. It didn't change a lot for us. Why the fuck are we playing the games then? Yeah, it's going to be crazy. At least with the A10 game that, either way, the winner's going in. We knew that when Dayton lost. That's not going to affect much. The Big Ten game's not going to affect much. Really, I guess maybe let's see what UAB's got in the latest bracket matrix real quick. If Temple wins, like that's obviously just a gut punch to everybody involved. If you're a bubble team there, I don't think UAB right now bracket matrix has UAB right around a 12 seed. And that's mostly because they're projected to win the American there. Yeah. I think UAB probably has to win. So it might not matter there if Temple wins or not. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of clenched buttholes, if you will, on the Selection Sunday show. And we will be covering that in its entirety. Again, during the entire selection show process, we will have guests. We'll put people through answering questions, talking about pairings, all that good stuff. We will wrap up tonight as we get to nearly 1 a.m. on the West Coast. Those of you on the East Coast hanging out till 4 a.m., you're the real MVPs. I appreciate you guys very much. Let's finish off the season strong. Let's get it done. Let's get those green screens, walk it to the window, all the profitability as we get into NIT, playing game, and the tournament, our upside to pad the bankroll and win those appliance monies. You know, all the Dylan Dessou washer and dryer. Every time I do a load of laundry in those machines, I always think of Dylan Dessou. Looking forward to another fantastic tournament. Let's get it. See you guys tomorrow. Peace.